Was that the New Orleans Saints on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium yesterday, or the greatest show on turf? I certainly couldn't tell a difference because the Indianapolis Colts defense let the Saints go up and down the field all afternoon long. What needs to change for this defense, and where do the Colts go from here? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here, as always, by my fellow writer and analyst at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, I was not expecting a 500-yard performance from Derek Carr and this Saints offense, but that's what happened yesterday. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about tonight. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. It was a nice, relaxing weekend. Like you said, though, holy cow, was I not expecting this either. This is a team that I even thought was on the verge of toppling because they really didn't have any identity against any competition they had all season, and they ran the ball pretty well. But Derek Carr picked apart the secondary. He had over 300 passing yards, as we'll talk about later. But yeah, not a good look for Colts fans. Not a good look for the secondary, and it starts to beg the question: are you going to do something to address that?
Yeah, and this is something. This is kind of a position group that we had talked about even in the spring and through the
Oh yeah.
summer months. They were kind of playing with fire a little bit with the quarterback position, deciding to go young, not bringing in any proven talent, and really, if injuries hit, they could be in trouble. And it certainly looks like that was kind of the case yesterday for the Indianapolis Colts. I want to give a shout out to people that are already in the chat. Truett with getting us off to a hot start with the super sticker tonight. Truett says, in the words of Admiral Akbar, it's a trap.
Game.
Trap game. That's for sure. And really, it wasn't even a trap game because the Colts were coming off of a big loss to the Cleveland Browns. And I think a lot of other parts showed up, but just the secondary was abysmal, to put it lightly. But sure, thank you so much for the super sticker, buddy. Really appreciate it. Nathan Comanci is here. Says, first, do you see the Colts maybe making any moves, and do we have any insight with the trade deadline coming up tomorrow? We're going to talk about the trade deadline a little later in the show. If we think the Colts are going to make any moves, and if they do, who are some targets and some players that they might potentially target. So keep that question handy, Nathan. We will talk about that later in the show. Stats Matt is here. What's up, gentlemen? Offense played well. JT is back. Needs a couple more touches. Defense played bad, specifically one player. That's the summary. On to the Panthers. Well, Stats Matt just gave us our show 3 minutes in. I think it's a new record.
Done.
Thanks a lot, Stats Matt, for that. But good to see you, buddy. Timothy Long is in here saying, hi, go Colts, my favorite team. So good to have you in here tonight, Timothy. Quentin says the Colts are a mess right now. I don't know what to say about it. Well, yep. Quentin, we're going to talk about it, and maybe we're gonna help get you back on track with things. Maybe calm some of those fears. But we'll keep it real tonight. That's for sure. And if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter or X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. If you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. So Drake, let's dive right into it tonight. The Colts basically imploded versus the New Orleans Saints, losing 39-27, dropping their third straight game of the 2023 season. Pretty simple. This was on the defense. The Colts scored 27 points, and you could critique some of the things that the offense did, and we'll certainly dive in and analyze all of that. But typically when you score 27 points, that should be enough to win in the NFL. And the Colts just could not stop Derek Carr and the Saints offense, plain and simple.
Well, and we mentioned it in the pregame breakdown on Thursday about this game, is that Derek Carr, he has a susceptibility to throwing some interceptions every now and again, but for the most part, he's had success against the Colts going back to when he was a Raider. So he was coming into this game though looking horrible. And even you mentioned this is a dude that was yelling at his coaches, yelling at his teammates, not what he typically does. Guy in his press conference is like, yeah, I really shouldn't act like that. That's really bad. So you were thinking this is the team to get right on. If you're gonna bounce back, this is it. You're at home, and the Colts fall in epic fashion. And I think the biggest thing, and we'll get to it later, but man, Rashid Shaheed, dude, he showed speed that is going to be a problem in the league once he starts to figure out the rest of his tools as a receiver. But my goodness, the Colts did not do themselves any favors with the coverage scheme against him. I mean, 3 targets, 3 catches, 153 receiving yards. So just even with pressure, they only sacked him once. It was just an all around, unfortunately bad defensive performance, really from top to bottom.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of hard to think about, because this Colts defense, I mean, they've been playing. I wouldn't say they've been playing great, but they've been playing well enough to win in most circumstances. Drake, because we've been talking last couple of weeks. Really, the losses go to Gardner Minshew and those turnovers, because those turnovers have led to short fields for the defense to have to cover, and the opposing offenses have had to capitalize. This week, it was all on the defense. Gardner Minshew did have one turnover, and we'll talk about Minshew in a bit, but to give up 38 points and really just allow the Saints to get whatever they wanted down the field was just unacceptable, and let's just dive right into the defense's performance here. I mean, 511 total yards allowed by this Colts defense. Derek Carr had a field day. He was 19 of 27 for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, with a quarterback rating of 133.3. Taysom Hill was also 1 for 2 for 44 yards. But you talked about it, Drake. Rashid Shaheed, 3 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown for the New Orleans Saints wide receiver. 109 of those yards and the touchdown were given up by Tony Brown. So Drake, just talk. I know what you're going to say, but just kind of talk me through Tony Brown's performance yesterday at cornerback.
Well, before that, for a moment, I mean, the leading rusher for the Saints wasn't Alvin Kamara on 17 carries for 59 yards. It was Taysom Hill, who scored 2 on the ground too. So the Colts also let Taysom Hill be a problem, who's basically, I think, a more capable Tim Tebow. But look, Tony Brown, there's a writer for Indy Star who, because it's our show, we're not going to name him, but typically he's disliked. There was a post, though, that made a lot of sense to me that basically said they've had him for 4 or 5 seasons. They know he's not really a cover corner. They have guys like Amir Speed, who, granted, he's a rookie and he just got picked up, but he probably is more capable than Tony Brown is as a corner. And then you also have Darrell Baker Jr., who's probably more capable than Tony Brown is as a corner. And I understand the confidence, and you want to give this guy a chance. But I mean, those 2 plays where he let Shaheed burn him, those were awful. But so was, I think, he fell down, and it was like a completion right where he fell that Carr completed easily, and it was like a 25-yard completion. Tony Brown really struggled. It's an unfortunate occurrence that it happened, but holy cow, they were just targeting him. They were just throwing the ball where I think it's kind of funny to say this, but it might not be totally inaccurate, that they were maybe like, hey, look, wherever 38 is, wherever Tony Brown is, target him, throw it over to him until he tells you otherwise. And he couldn't answer the call. So
it was that whoever offense, whoever Tony Brown is on, throwing the ball.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it was.
Yep.
And I hate to bash on Tony Brown, because I mean, you are right. I mean, really, when you look at Tony Brown and his history, he's been a special teams ace. That is what he is on the Colts for, is to be a gunner on special teams. Yes, he's the backup nickel to Kenny Moore, but he wasn't playing nickel either yesterday. He was playing outside, a position that is vastly different than playing in the nickel. I don't care what anyone says, that they're both cornerbacks. That's just not how it works. The outside cornerback position, you play that so much differently than how you play the nickel position. And I think this is there's blame to go around on all of this, really. Tony Brown, yes, I think you have to. I mean, if Tony Brown is out there and playing, you got to put up some sort of a fight. I mean, you are a National Football League player, okay? You're not some bum that the Colts brought in off the street. You got to put up a fight, and you've got to play better than that, plain and simple. But I also put this blame on the coaching staff as well. I put it on Gus Bradley and Ron Miles. Not so much Shane Steichen, and people need to get this straight too. Shane Steichen does not determine who goes into the ball game, okay, on offense or defense. That is handled by the position coaches. Shane Steichen has enough to deal with during the game than handle substitutions. That is the job of the position coaches. So Gus Bradley and Ron Miles, the defensive backs coach, they're the ones that prepared Tony Brown and prepared him for this moment. There was no adjustments. When you see Tony Brown starting to struggle like that, I mean, yes, Daryl Baker Jr. has had his struggles here this season. Nothing like that. Nothing compared to what Tony Brown had yesterday. There has to be the substitution to get Daryl Baker Jr. in there. Daryl Baker Jr. played 0 defensive snaps yesterday. When Tony Brown is playing the way Tony Brown played like that can't happen. An adjustment has to be made. And I know that Steichen is going to defend Gus Bradley like he did today.
Of course.
But
no.
Yeah, Gus Bradley and Miles, that has to be done. You can't just let that guy continually get cooked over and over and over again. We knew it after the first quarter that Tony Brown needed to be benched and Daryl Baker Jr. needed to come in. And for them to continue to just let this guy out there, let this guy be embarrassed, and let this guy continue to give up yards and points, I mean, that falls solely on the feet of Gus Bradley and Ron Miles.
Yeah, and when you look at his his PFF grades, like this is obviously a guy who struggled, but the confidence becomes an even bigger issue, because if it's someone out there who's clearly struggling like that and you keep him out there and he's just continuously struggling, it's only going to be a slippery slope until it's just a full-blown, blown play or multiple blown plays from Brown. But on 55 snaps, okay, he had a defensive grade of 26.8, which I believe was the lowest of the game. He
Absolutely.
had a coverage grade of 28.4. A tackle grade. Okay, so not just his coverage was struggling, his tackling was too. It was 27.2. So look, Jalen Jones also struggled too, but he was far better in coverage. Okay, Daryl Baker Jr. would have been an upgrade. Amir Speed would have been an upgrade. On the depth chart, Tony Brown is behind Kenny Moore on the depth chart. So it's like you're considering him by depth chart standards. He's a nickel corner. He's the guy who's the slot dude. Why is he on the outside? I just didn't understand the placement of Tony Brown there. Again, I understand you want to give him a chance. At one point, up until a couple games ago, he was the only guy on the team that had a pick. So I get it, but he is a special teams ace. He's a guy who maybe can fill in for a quarter, okay, and he can be effective. But man, to have him out there just getting roasted like that, even by the Saints' arguably third receiver, man, you really should have gotten him out of the game. You had other options that would have easily been an upgrade.
Well, and the thing is, too, I mean, it wasn't just like Daryl Baker Jr. wasn't the only option. Kenny Moore, when the Colts are in their base defense, we have 3 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks out there. Kenny Moore does play outside. It's not like he comes off the field during those plays just because he's the nickel. When there's only 2 cornerbacks out there, Kenny Moore is one of the outside corners. He just shifts inside to the nickel when the Colts go into nickel and dime packages. So, I mean, Kenny Moore has plenty of experience playing outside. You could have shifted Kenny Moore to the outside and put in someone else in the nickel. Maybe Tony Brown plays better in the nickel. And if not Brown, you have Julian Blackmon, who spent time at nickel last year when Kenny Moore was hurt. Something that Julian Blackmon chastised me for months ago when I just simply admitted that was a possibility.
Leave me alone, bro.
Yeah, leave me alone, bro. So, hey, at least he called me bro. He could have called me something far worse than that. But Julian Blackmon was an option in the slot. Nick Cross, who the Colts defensive coaches, Gus Bradley has said, we need to get Nick Cross on the field more. Why didn't you then? Nick Cross has been trained and has practiced as a slot cornerback and gotten snaps in the slot there. So Nick Cross could have been an option if you wanted to stick Kenny Moore on the outside. There were plenty of options out there and ready to go besides just saying, it's either Tony Brown or Darrell Baker Jr. You could have done more things with that. And as an NFL coach and as NFL defensive coordinator, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. So it just did not add up to me. And I saw people criticizing Tony Brown, and rightfully so. Tony Brown was awful yesterday, but this also falls at the feet of the coaches, and it also falls on the feet. I'm not gonna, and I also saw overreaction saying that this falls on Chris Ballard and he should be fired. Listen, I am not going to fire Chris Ballard over a cornerback 5 performance, and it's not like Chris Ballard made the decision to put Tony Brown out there, and it also wasn't Chris Ballard who made the decision to keep Tony Brown out there. That was on the coaches. So does Chris Ballard hold some accountability for not maybe addressing the cornerback position properly in the offseason by maybe not bringing in some more vets on the outside? Sure, you can go that. But as far as what happened specifically yesterday, I'm not going to put it much on Chris Ballard. That is really the bulk of the blame goes on Gus Bradley, Ron Miles, and those defensive coaches.
Yeah, I mean, Ballard's not giving the orders from the press box, or from the suite, like, hey, I'm going to need you guys to rotate out Tony Brown and please put in another cornerback. Like, that's not what he's doing. So I understand there's a lot of frustration because you would see it time after time after time. 38 was running after a receiver, he was falling down, or he just wasn't making a tackle. It's not wrong to criticize Tony Brown for a bad performance, but to hate on the guy, it's a bad game. It was just an all around terrible game, but not just from him. Okay. Even certain offensive players also didn't play the best either. But the defense as a whole, man, I think you could say the worst of it was Tony Brown, but man, as a whole, they really didn't do themselves all the best favors either.
So. No, I mean, the Colts missed Grover Stewart there in the middle. There were multiple times where the linebackers missed on plays. I saw Zaire Franklin whiff on a couple. I thought yesterday, just looking at the linebackers, I thought Shaquille Leonard played the best out of all the linebackers yesterday. Shaq looked like Shaq again, and so there's multiple blame to go around. But looking at the cornerbacks position specifically, how concerned are you with this cornerback position moving forward, Drake? I mean, Dallas Flowers is not coming back the rest of the year with that torn Achilles. Kenny Moore, yes, Kenny Moore is playing at a Pro Bowl level. I think we can all be comfortable with where Kenny Moore is at, but you can't put Kenny Moore at every single corner spot. Juju Brents has played well when he's in there, but again, dealing with that injury, and we're not sure when exactly he'll be back. So how concerned are you with the cornerback position for the Colts right now?
Well, they've let up at least 35 points in the last 3 games, all losses. This was the most embarrassing because it's not the Jags and it's not a defense that is like the Browns where you're going to be having a slugfest. It's a team that was really walking into this game under-equipped as far as how they were connecting. And the Colts just gave them the easiest game, especially Derek Carr. Derek Carr looked happy for the first time this season against the Colts. So I think there is reason to worry. I think there is cause for concern. Even though this wasn't supposed to be a quote-unquote playoff season, I think you still have to treat this like we got to do something, right? You can't, even if you were to say, all right, Darrell Baker, you're now starting. Tony Brown, you're going to be backing up Kenny Moore again, and then we're even going to move Amir Speed behind Darrell Baker Jr. You still need to bring somebody in, I think. Somehow, some way, you need to maybe elevate someone from the practice squad. Something needs to happen at cornerback. You got to bring in more bodies because you just can't have another situation where you have one guy out there just getting cooked over and over. And again, you mentioned it. Miles and Bradley really need to be the ones to answer for keeping Tony Brown out there and just letting him get destroyed.
And one guy I haven't mentioned, though, but I think he has been playing very well, is Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones honestly has played a lot better than I think people want to give him credit for, just because he doesn't have an interception. You don't really hear his name often, but since Dallas Flowers went down, Jalen Jones has played pretty well, and for a 7th-round pick that wasn't even a guarantee to make this roster, I think he's done a really good job, and I want to continue to see how he does throughout the rest of the season. We have a super chat from the CFO himself, Patrick Rye, making his first appearance on the screen here for us this evening. You can tell I've been working quite a bit today, but hey, thanks a lot, Patrick. Really do appreciate it, buddy. He says, send a first to Denver for Pat Surtain. I'm over this inconsistent secondary. If they don't, that first should go to a cornerback in 2024 anyway, not a wide receiver. So, Patrick, I'm going to play devil's advocate for you. Well, first, for just a little bit. First of all, 1 first-round pick for Patrick Surtain, that ain't getting it done. It's probably going to be close to, if not more, than the deal for Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, I think, fetched 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Stats, Matt, check my stats or check my memory on that. But I think it's going to take more than that. And I just where the Colts are. Again, they're not in win now mode, so I don't think they'd want to give up that much draft capital for Pat Surtain just because they're not in that win now mode. And to be honest, if Juju Brents comes back, then you do have a good cornerback. You could be able to find another cornerback next year in the 2nd round. And if the Colts keep losing, Marvin Harrison Jr. really will be a possibility. And you want to pair Marvin Harrison Jr. with Anthony Richardson for the next 12 to 14 years, I think I'd take that over any cornerback in this draft class. So, I just think it's going to be the asking price for Patrick Surtain is going to be too much for the Colts, especially considering how the Colts aren't just that one piece away from competing for a Super Bowl. It's still going to take some time. And hell, I might be way off on this. What do you think, Drake?
I mean, that would be a wonderful idea. First off, I think that the Broncos have made it clear that they aren't interested in letting Surtain go because I think he's literally the smartest defensive player they have. But I mean, yeah, I agree. And Andrew, I don't think the Colts have the position right now to make that trade make sense. But I will say, I also believe that they do like Dallas Flowers. I think that they really like Dallas Flowers. I think that it was so tragic that he couldn't go this season. Because it's I was really excited to see what he was going to do. Very athletic corner that can keep up with literally, if he would have been covering Rashid Shaheed, I don't think Shaheed gets away with speed. Okay. I think that Flowers keeps up with him. So we'll see. But, I think that'd be a wonderful, occurrence if it actually would happen. But yeah, the Colts aren't going to give up that much.
Okay, Stats Matt does say that Ramsey to the Rams was 2 1s and a 4. So I was correct on that. And that Patrick Surtain would fetch that easily. I mean, he's a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. So it'd be really tough for the Colts to get that away. The best option for the Colts right now would be a veteran free agent like a Casey Hayward. Otherwise, you're probably looking at a free agent in the spring or in the draft. And this is kind of what I wrote last night. The Colts made their bed with how they handled the cornerback position, wanting to go young and not choosing not to go after these veteran free agents. Now they kind of have to lie in it. And unfortunately, there really isn't an easy obvious fix until after the season. So Patrick, really appreciate the comment, buddy. It was a fun conversation, honestly. Like discussing that. And as always, you definitely make our show better. So thanks a lot, Patrick, for that. But let's talk about let's switch gears here a little bit, Drake. Let's move to the offensive side of the ball and talk about Gardner Minshew. And for the most part, I thought Minshew was solid yesterday. I would say he was probably average. Took care of the football for the most part. 213 yards and a touchdown, and 2 touchdowns, excuse me. But man, that interception with the Colts only down, I think the Colts were only down 1 at that point. And it was right after a huge Zach Moss run that got the Colts down in scoring position. The momentum was on the Colts side. And then just another boneheaded decision where he tried to float the ball up in there, and it really wasn't even close to Michael Pittman Jr. The Saints intercept it. Saints end up going down the field, scoring a touchdown, 14-point swing right there. So again, now it's 9 turnovers in 3 games. Just not good enough. And he was close, really close to not having a turnover in this game. But man, it seemed like it came at one of the most inopportune times for the Colts, and they could never recover.
Yeah, and there was a point that you made that Minshew, you even went through why you think he's fumbling because maybe the ball was a little too far out when he starts running. Maybe he doesn't keep it close. During that game, he was doing everything right. They even broke it down on the broadcast, him escaping the pocket on a run, where instead of just running with the ball with one hand, he held onto it with two, started running, and then when he realized he was in open space, then allowed the ball to drop to one arm. I mean, he was really trying to prevent turnovers. But like you said, that throw, you got to understand the situation. You got to understand where you're at. You also have to understand your defensive counterparts are getting the ever-loving crap kicked out of them. You can definitely not afford to turn it over because there's a really good chance they're not going to be able to help you. Okay, so there's just a lot of factors that went into that. If you look at the stat line, if you had him in fantasy, hey, Minshew didn't do too bad, but man, that interception, it was just so crucial. It was right in front of when they were going to score, and it really halted that entire drive and the momentum for the rest of the game, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And there were some other misses towards the end of the game that I thought really hurt the Colts as well. But again, it kind of gets back to that moniker that we've been talking about, Drake, is you're rarely going to win because of Gardner Minshew. You can definitely win with Gardner Minshew, but as far as him leading a fourth quarter comeback and putting the game on his shoulders to get you a game winning drive, I just don't have that confidence in Gardner Minshew that I even had earlier this season with Anthony Richardson to be able to do that. Like Anthony Richardson, when he's out there on the field, you always have a chance. With Gardner Minshew, it's just you feel like it's gonna take a miracle. So I mean, solid, but just not good enough from the backup quarterback on Sunday. And then let's get into another topic here that really crossed the minds of a lot of Colts fans and is creating a buzz on social media. Jonathan Taylor got off to a wicked fast start. I think in the first half he had 12 carries for 94 yards, or was it 11 carries for 94 yards in the first half? Then we get to the second half. 1 carry, 1 yard the entire second half for Jonathan Taylor. And we heard Shane Steichen talk about it that I mean, Zach Moss kind of ripped off that big run, so they were riding the hot hand there, and then the Colts were down, so they really couldn't get into running fits because they were trying to get back into the game. What do you think, Drake? Do you think that the Colts mismanaged this with Jonathan Taylor, or do you not have a problem with how they used the running backs yesterday against the Saints?
I first off, the reason I think that he didn't get those carries in the second half is different than what I personally think of how they executed the game plan. I wanted to see more Jonathan Taylor. This is a guy who absolutely thrives with volume. He thrives with momentum, and volume and momentum with Jonathan Taylor, when they're combined and they're both working, he turns into a hell of a problem. Okay. So I just didn't like the fact that you start out so torrid, so hot like that. By metrics, he was going to have 22 carries for 188 rushing yards, and he just got cut off. I don't understand. I thought to myself, how could that possibly happen? Why would you do that? And a hot hand, come on, Steichen. Taylor is the superior running back. If he's killing it, Moss should be complimenting him every step of the way, regardless of how Moss is doing. That's just my opinion. But then I thought, I wonder if he tweaked his ankle. I wonder if something happened with his ankle or something happened with maybe a lower extremity where they're like, you know what? We're going to let Moss go ahead and do this. He's got a hot hand right now. You rest until we can confirm you're good. And maybe he didn't. That's just kind of like thinking outside the box, but maybe something happened where they're like, we're just going to take it easy with you.
I don't think it was that, because they specifically asked Steichen after the game if Taylor got hurt or it was injury related, and Steichen said no, that there was no injury. So and that's honestly that's a good thing, because you don't want this ankle injury to flare up again for Jonathan Taylor, especially after the Colts give him that huge extension. But I do agree with you in that that Jonathan Taylor, it's like the more carries he gets, the better Jonathan Taylor gets. And he's just the type of back that wears down the defense. So that way, in that fourth quarter, when you're trying to stop a Jonathan Taylor, just his style of running, you're going to have a hard time stopping a running back that's 230 pounds that can run a 4.340, so he just wears on defenses to where you get to the point in the fourth quarter and he's clicking off 7-8 yards per carry. And I think Jonathan Taylor, even for the game, finished with 7.9 yards per carry. So yeah, I do understand Shane Steichen's thinking in that, when the Colts were down, it's really hard to really focus on the run game because you're trying to get things back. You're trying to get back into the game. And the Colts did at one point have something dialed up for Jonathan Taylor, and then they get a penalty, they get a false start, it moves them back another 5 yards. Then they have to try to throw to get those yards back, and then they get behind the sticks, and then pretty soon, then you're trying to have to throw to get out of it. But it was a little bit. I do think that the Colts should have used Jonathan Taylor more yesterday in the second half. That's obvious when he's off to that fast start. I also don't think that was the main reason that they lost, because for all this talk about, Jonathan Taylor should have been in the game. Wasn't like Zach Moss was out there playing like a scrub either. Zach Moss averaged 6 yards per carry yesterday as well. He had 11 carries for 66 yards. So it wasn't a major drop off by any means, but yes, you do need to have Jonathan Taylor out there more. He looks 100% to me. So I think you can take the training wheels off and you can start riding your bell cow back once again. Look to get between 15 to 18 carries every single game for Jonathan Taylor, maybe even more, because like I said, he wears down teams in the second half, and he's not used to being in a running back by committee approach. Shane Steichen really isn't used to having a bell cow back. So yes, I understand Zach Moss is there, but Jonathan Taylor is a different animal. He's a different breed of running back. He needs to be your go-to guy, and he needs to have more lenience and more. I think more needs to be focused on getting Jonathan Taylor his touches, whether that is in the running game or even in the passing game, because Jonathan Taylor has shown this year in that he can catch the ball, and he's gotten the ball in open field in multiple situations from Gardner Minshew and has been able to make something of it. So do I think the Colts lost because Jonathan Taylor didn't get the ball in the second half? No. But do I think Jonathan Taylor should have still gotten the ball more in the second half? Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially when you don't have the element of Anthony Richardson's mobility and arm and the way that he can stretch a defense from, sideline to sideline, I think Jonathan Taylor is even more important than ever. You have to get that ground game going. Like you said, you're not going to win because of Gardner Minshew. You're going to win with Gardner Minshew. Now, is it fair to say that Minshew and any backup quarterback really isn't designed for a shootout? That's also very fair. I think the only backup quarterbacks I can think of right off the top of my head are guys like, the former player Ryan Fitzpatrick or Jameis Winston. Those are really the backups that just go out there and throw the ball wherever they can find a spot. Okay, but Minshew's not that guy. He doesn't have the arm. So, man, I really hope they put an emphasis on getting Jonathan Taylor that ball. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 20-plus carries against Carolina.
If they're in that spot, I mean, and then you going up against Frank Reich, he's going to try to be prepared for that. But if Jonathan Taylor has the hot hand and can keep going, I think the Colts should ride Jonathan Taylor to a victory. But the wide receivers, let's move to the wide receivers. We saw some production out of these guys again on Sunday. Michael Pittman Jr., after he made those comments, and then credit to Michael Pittman again last week coming out and kind of dissolving the situation, say, heat of the moment, I'm a sore loser, I'm working on it, but I didn't mean that. Well, Shane Steichen certainly made it a concerted effort to get Pittman the ball early and often. I think 6 of the first 7 attempts by Minshew went to Pittman, finished with eight catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown there. And when Pittman was involved there early, the Colts had a pretty commanding lead. So like I've always said, I've said this since he was drafted in 2020, when you put the ball in Michael Pittman's hands, good things tend to happen.
Yeah, and that touchdown he scored was awesome. He really fought hard for that, and I Again, he leads the team in catches. I know it was only 40 yards, but they were really pressing him pretty hard. And I think the Saints defense made an emphasis like, we're taking him away. We're going to force rookie Josh Downs to beat us, which I think that we'll get to Josh Downs next and how he answered that call. But man, Michael Pittman, he just continues to prove people wrong game after game. This guy is a legitimate number one receiver in the NFL. Again, he's playing with another different quarterback, and it's a backup quarterback, and he continues to lead the team in targets, 13 for the game, and catches with 8.
Well, after that hot start, the Saints made an adjustment on defense. I know maybe some on the other side aren't privy to making adjustments on defense, but the Saints did make an adjustment, and they started doubling and pushing coverage over to Michael Pittman, which opened things up for Josh Downs, who had, again, another really good game for the rookie. 7 catches, 72 yards. He's now on pace for over 1,000 yards in his rookie season, and just can't say enough about Josh Downs and just finally giving another consistent receiving threat opposite of Michael Pittman Jr. That when Pittman is taken away because he's being doubled and because coverage is rolling over to that side, you have Josh Downs who can win his matchup there in the slot and has been proving very vital for this Colts defense to be able to move the chains and get down the field.
Yeah, and look, Josh Downs is continuously showing that he may be one of those guys you look back on in a couple of years and you're like, he was a ridiculous steal. Okay, he's playing incredibly well. He looks more, I think, I can't remember which broadcaster it was, but someone said this guy just does not look like a rookie receiver. His instincts are veteran. His speed is veteran. The way that he runs his routes, veteran-like. This guy is going to be a problem. He's already being compared to T.Y. Hilton. Look, man, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I think he's a better route runner than T.Y. Hilton. I think he will be a better route runner. And no offense to T.Y., but he didn't make it work too well outside of Andrew Luck. Josh Downs is out there making it work with a rookie quarterback who's not supposed to be accurate and a backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew.
Early on in his career, T.Y. Hilton won mostly with speed. And then as he got later into his career, he became that route running technician. Josh Downs is already there as far as the route running. Definitely that was the thing that separated him from other wide receivers in this draft class was his route running ability. So it's pretty encouraging to see, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think Josh Downs is just going to continue to get better and better as this year goes on, and then for years to come as well. Stats Matt makes a good point. Imagine the thought that the Colts could have 2 1,000-yard receivers and still finish 5-12.
Wild.
That's the kind of season that 2023 has been. So Drake, to kind of put a bow on this, I mean, we talked about how the defense, obviously terrible performance from the unit as a whole. There was some bright spots on offense, but still couldn't get it done. So pretty simple. I mean, the Colts are now 3-5, about halfway through the season, and have some winnable games coming up that they really need to take advantage of to kind of get their season back on track. So where do the Colts go from here?
Man, 3 losses in a row. Typically, this is where you're at a crossroads as a team, especially when it's in the middle of the season. You have the perfect games, though. Okay, you've got the Carolina Panthers. I don't care if Frank Reich's the play caller. They are not equipped right now to play NFL football. The fact they beat the Texans should have probably ended up winning that game. Okay, they need to win against Carolina, plain and simple. And then they have the New England Patriots, and they have them in Germany. It's not in Foxborough. Okay, this is neutral ground here. So I don't know if either team has more of a presence in Germany, but I don't think it matters. I think you got to beat the Patriots, man. This is the one time you might talk about Bill Belichick's career where his team absolutely sucks. Okay, so you got to take advantage of it. His defense is always going to be there. The man is a defensive genius, but that offense is really struggling. So, man, look for that defensive front in that game for sure.
Yeah, these next 2 games are crucial.
Big.
You know, if as far as must-win games are concerned, I think this week in Carolina is a must-win game for the Colts. You know, you got to win against the Panthers. You got to beat the Patriots. Both teams are struggling and have worse records than the Indianapolis Colts. Have to go and win those contests. If you do, then maybe you still have a chance to make something out of this season. If not, then you're probably looking to 2024, and you're starting to look at the draft position and where the Colts will be picking to potentially add more talent. What does not matter what side of the ball. It doesn't matter if they get lucky enough to get a Marvin Harrison Jr. on offense or a Kool-Aid McKinstry on defense at cornerback. But these games are crucial, and I think the Colts, if they want to make something out of 2023, still they've got to go 2-0 before they head into the bye week. So Drake, let's wrap up here and talk about some of the injuries. Luckily the Colts had no injuries on Sunday, no new injuries to report. So we'll just talk about the guys that missed Sunday's contest. Obviously, not a single player was missed more than Juju Brents. Juju Brents was out with a quad injury. The Colts haven't really said how long Juju Brents will be out. They don't think it will be long. They don't think this is going to be something where he needs to go on IR, at least not yet. But the sooner Brents can come back, the better for this Colts defense, obviously.
Look, man, this season it's 3-5, but people need to realize there's a lot of rookies that these Colts have selected. In fact, I think who went out on season-ending injury? It was Daniel Scott. It was Titus Leo, and
Jake Witt, and Anthony Richardson.
So they've lost 4 of these 12 guys. Now, here's the thing, though. You're really excited about Richardson. Well, look, Jalen Jones is playing great. Juju Brents is playing fantastic. I think for the expectation, you're talking about Jalen Jones was such a late round pick. He's actually out there playing pretty decent. Juju Brents is playing exactly like the Colts needed him to. And it's kind of a shame that he's already hurt, but I think it's just been one of those seasons, man. I think that the injury bug has kind of plagued the Indianapolis Colts locker room, and you just hope Juju Brents doesn't have to go on to IR because, like you mentioned, I have heard that floated around his name, though.
Right. Braden Smith missed another game with hip and wrist injuries. I thought Blake Freeland in his stead did fine, I would say.
Yeah.
You really didn't hear his name too much, which is good. So, but still, you want Braden Smith back on that offensive line. Kylan Granson missed his second straight game with a concussion, which allowed Drew Ogletree to get some extra snaps. And Drew Ogletree been playing his ass off. Drew Ogletree looks pretty good out there, and I think he is earning a full-time role as one of the starting tight ends in this offense. And then finally, to round things out, Eric Johnson, the defensive tackle, second-year defensive tackle, who hurt his ankle against the Browns, did not suit up on Sunday, and the Colts definitely felt that against the run. With Grover Stewart out, the backup nose tackle and Eric Johnson was out. It allowed the Saints to really damage some things when really all you have to focus on is double teaming DeForest Buckner, and then there's a wide open lane in there. So all those guys, I think the Colts desperately need them back to help get them back on track.
Yeah, and I know that Braden Smith's an easy one to go to, but I think, like you said, Freeland is actually playing like a pretty damn good backup tackle right now. So I think you need Eric Johnson back. Love Taven Bryan. I was a fan of him when he got drafted, even though he's kind of, since he was first round pick, he's kind of considered a bust at this point. But the guy just gets destroyed in run defense, man. He just gets absolutely manhandled. If it's 3rd and 7, great. If it's 3rd and 1 and 96 is out there, that ball is probably getting ran in his gap.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors. Specifically, since we're coming up on the NFL trade deadline, now we're going to kind of address Nathan's question from earlier on in the show. Deadline for trades in the NFL tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So Drake, I know you've already written a piece. We've already written a couple of pieces about this on horseshoehuddle.com about if the Colts will make any moves. If they do, who should they go after? Who are some players that might be traded away? So Drake, I want to hear it from you, buddy. Do you think the Colts will end up making any moves? And then just for the sake of argument, let's say they do make some moves. Who are some guys that you think that should be targets or could be targets for the Colts here as the trade deadline is now less than 24 hours away?
Yeah, they're not going to do anything. No, they're not going to do anything. But if they did, or if for some reason a Hail Mary throw gets caught and they make something happen, 3 guys came to mind. Elam, I think it's Elam. Yeah.
Yes.
Kaiir Elam from the Buffalo Bills. I think that it's not working for him there, but I think with the fact that he's like, let me see, 22 years old, so much to still mold. Okay. Like I think that is a really interesting one right there. I do like Terrace Marshall Jr. from the Carolina Panthers. I think that the Colts, I think Isaiah McKenzie, I think he has shown that he's much more of the gadget guy, the kick returner, punt returner type guy. And of course, he's Josh Downs' backup. Okay. I do think that Marshall Jr. could push Alec Pierce in this offense, though, because Marshall Jr. is no slouch. He's 6'2" and he's 200 pounds. He could find his way with a guy like Anthony Richardson. So that's somebody to look out for. Clearly doesn't want to be in Carolina, but who would if you're a pass catcher? And then I think the longest shot would be Jalen Johnson from the Bears. I think that the way that the Bears season is going, they might want to move somebody, get that capital, but he's also so young, they might want to keep him around. So 2 cornerbacks and a wide receiver, but absolutely not. I do not think they're going to do anything.
Yeah, I don't think they will either.
Yeah,
the Colts really haven't been active at the trade deadline. Yes, there's rumors out there. There's still the rumor that the Colts were interested in Jerry Jeudy. I really don't think that's going to happen, especially if the Broncos are still asking for a first-round pick for him or second-round pick. No. I don't think Ballard's will say, okay, thanks, but no thanks on that one. But the Jalen Johnson really intrigues me, Drake, because it would add a young cornerback. He already has a teammate on the team. Jalen Johnson was teammates with Julian Blackmon at Utah, and he's a long, athletic young cornerback that I think would fit very well in Gus Bradley's defense. You could see a defense with Jalen Johnson on one side, Juju Brents on the other, with Kenny Moore in the slot. That's a pretty good cornerback trio, if you're asking me, and especially having Jalen Jones as depth behind there if Dallas Flowers in the future or he pushes for a starting spot. We're getting ahead of ourselves there, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Jalen Johnson's game. I don't now. Here's the thing: do I think the Bears are going to part with him? Probably not. But I think that's more realistic than to say that the Colts should go out and get a top corner or that the Colts are really going to sell anybody. The only one that I could really think the Colts selling on would be Mo Alley Cox. But even there, with Jelani Woods not healthy, the Colts still need Mo Alley Cox. They're not going to get rid of Zach Moss. They're not getting, as seen, they still value Zach Moss, and they're going to ride this out. He's still the second leading rusher in the NFL. They want to pair Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss together for the rest of the season. Other guys like Kenny Moore II isn't going anywhere. You're not going to trade Shaq Leonard, but regardless of what some fans want to over Chris Ballard's dead body, will DeForest Buckner be traded from this team. Literally. You're not going to trade Alec Pierce on a rookie deal. The Colts just aren't in a position to really go out and buy because they're not making a championship push, but they're not exactly in a position to go and sell either because they're not completely tanking with this team. There's plenty of pieces in place that they think they can compete the rest of the way. So as has been the past, I don't think the Colts do make any moves, but man, Jalen Johnson for the right price, very intriguing, and I'd probably pull the trigger on that one. So let's talk about a couple practice squad moves the Colts made this week, actually made today. The Colts signed safety Tyreek Jones to the practice squad. Now, Tyreek Jones was an undrafted free agent out of Boise State. He hasn't played in the NFL, spent most of this season on the New York Jets practice squad, but in 59 games at Boise State, he had 157 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, a sack, 18 passes defended, and to go along with 4 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles, winning all Mountain West honorable mention 2 times. But Drake, honestly, I think this move, just more depth in the secondary at the safety position and nothing more than that.
Yeah, and maybe it's just the Colts trying to figure out a way to put even the back end of the depth for the secondary because of what just happened. They just got absolutely smacked by a team that really shouldn't have done that to them. So I can see why they would do that. But yeah, I absolutely think that Tyreek Jones is more of just a depth piece. More realistically, you might not see his name here in about a month.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as
Yeah.
well. And then to make room for Jones, the Colts did release defensive tackle Ross Blacklock from the practice squad. He did not last long, not even a week. But that's kind of how it works sometimes on the practice squad for the Indianapolis Colts. So Drake, our final segment of our recap episode, as always, Colts player of the game. So I'm gonna let you go first this week, Drake. Who is your Colts player of the game? Who deserves this award after the 11-point loss on Sunday?
I was gonna say Josh Downs, but I was just like, gosh, I've just been saying his name every week at this point. So I'm gonna go with Shaq Leonard.
Okay.
Shaq Leonard had a season high 11 tackles. He was on the field a lot, but look, man, he's getting overshadowed. He's making progress game after game. He's starting to play better and better. Him and Zaire together had 25 tackles, but Zaire having 14 is really no surprise. Shaq Leonard, though, my player of the game. It's good to see him back and out there attacking the football.
It really is. And like I said earlier in the show, Shaq Leonard looked the best again. He's
Yep.
getting better each and every week. And it's kind of getting on that timeline where the Colts think he could be back to 100%, back to his old self by November. 11 tackles. He was consistently around the ball,
Oh
making
yeah.
plays. I thought Shaq Leonard played a hell of a game yesterday. And, it's looking more and more like we're getting that Shaq Leonard of old. And pretty soon he's going to have more opportunities for turnovers because they're not going to be rotating him in with EJ Speed as much. That means more Leonard will be in on more passing situations, and he's going to get more and more of those turnovers and that be able to showcase his playmaking ability. Shout out to my beautiful wife Danielle for her nightly
Woo!
super sticker coming in the clutch here at the very end. Really appreciate that as always here. And for my player of the game, I'm going to go with Michael Pittman Jr. Like I said before, and like I will always continue to say, good things happen when Michael Pittman Jr. has the ball in his hand. 8
That's
catches
right.
for, well, it was only 40 yards, still had that touchdown. But hey, when Michael Pittman Jr. was heavily involved in the game plan and they were getting him the ball, Colts were up 17-7. Once the Saints adjusted and really made it their focus to take him out of the game, the Colts only scored 10 more points the rest of the way. So Michael Pittman Jr. is my player of the game. Definitely showing that he is a wide receiver one. Definitely showing the Colts that they need to lock him up long term. And I think that they will. I think Michael Pittman is in this team's long-term plans to pair with Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, and maybe another wide receiver if it's not Alec Pierce to really make this offense go for years to come. So Colts 3-5. It's not the end of the world. And again, like we've always said, it's never been about 2023. It's always been about 2024 and beyond. But if the Colts do want to make something out of their season, they've got to turn it around, and they've got to turn it around fast. So that's our show for this evening, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in and talking some Colts football with us. Maybe letting out some frustrations over 3 straight losses. Want to give a shout out to our super chats for the evening. Truitt, Patrick, the CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, and Dan, my beautiful wife Danielle. Thank you all so much for your super chats. And thank you all to the rest of you guys who tuned in and made tonight a really fun episode for us here on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. So if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review because it really helps us reach other Colts fans just like you. As always, Drake, the hardest working man in Colts media, has been pushing out content on horseshoehuddle.com for us. Tell the people what they need to go check out that you've written.
So I did the 3 good, 3 bad in the loss to the Saints, and then I just released 3 trade targets the Colts should pursue ahead of the deadline, which I gave them out on the show. But if you haven't seen the show, go check it out.
Definitely go check those pieces out. They're a lot of fun to read. For myself, I did put out that piece on from Omaha Productions. They gave me early access to Peyton's Places with Peyton Manning and Pat McAfee. Really fun episode. I definitely learned a lot about punting and made me laugh quite a bit as well. So make sure you go check that out. My post-game analysis on why the Colts are hurting at cornerback, obviously, but why it also probably isn't going to be fixed anytime soon. So you can check that out. And then finally, tomorrow, I'm going to drop my piece giving my analysis on the top 5 graded players from the Colts' performance against the Saints. So make sure you check all of those pieces out, as well as any other pieces written by the fine folks, by our fine colleagues and teammates at horseshoehuddle.com. You can follow Drake at DWalster on X. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Thursday night to get you all set for the Colts showdown with Frank Reich and the Carolina Panthers. We were hoping for Anthony Richardson versus Bryce Young, but instead we're just going to have to focus on Shane Steichen versus Frank Reich. Either way, it's going to be a fun matchup and a very important game for both teams. So everybody enjoy your week. Watch Monday Night Football. Enjoy, hopefully, the Lions coming out on top over the Raiders because, man, we love those new Lions. But everybody, enjoy it, and we'll see you soon.